So, good evening, everybody. Very kind introduction. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the architecture. I'm very excited to be here tonight. Thanks to all of you, of course. It's been a long day, I guess. The bad news is my Greek is very poor. It's actually non-existing. The good news, I'm the only guy between you and your drinks. So hang in there. It's going to be interesting and fun and colorful, I hope. So as Elias pointed out, my background is architecture. I'm an architect. And you might wonder, what is an architect actually doing at a car company, obviously, right? And for that, I need to take you back in time. Like 2019, Mini turned 60, so it was invented in 1959, based on an idea how we can move better and more cleverly inside of cities. So how can we shrink a big car while still have it all? It was based on three basic principles. One was the creative use of space. The other one, iconic design. Of course, if you've ever driven a Mini, it's a fun experience as well. So that was 60 years ago. Today, of course, we're in a different age, but still, and Mini has changed, but still the DNA of the brand is very present, of course. Here you can see things happening at Mini to understand the city from a holistic perspective and to work with cities from a holistic perspective, because Mini originally was invented as a car for the city, for the urban realm. So, of course, we are focusing on how to invent automotive and mobility concepts for the future. We also have a startup accelerator in New York that's very successful, running since 3 years, focusing on tech and product innovation. We have a cultural platform in Greenpoint in Brooklyn called ADO, basically an open platform for creatives to work and hang out. We have an interest in fashion, and the project that I'm responsible for is basically living. So the idea how can a brand like Mini think different about living? How can we change the cities actually that are produced at the moment? So the Mini itself is, as I said, it's a creative concept of space. So you can consider it as a small piece of moving architecture. And with Mini Living, we're translating those ideas that lie behind the car and the brand into innovative housing concepts. When this picture was taken in actually 1968, it was the first picture from another planet taken by a man to Earth, to our home. There were roughly 4 billion people living by the time on the whole planet. Nowadays, we have roughly 4 billion people just living inside of cities. So we all know this. The future will be urbanized. There's a high strive towards city. People love cities, cities like Athens. They are places of innovation. I think they're the greatest human invention. This is where culture moves on and where basically personal growth can happen, of course. If we take a look how the cities, how our homes are actually constructed, it's really interesting that a lot of them rely on very old principles. I just picked two of them. The Garden City concept by Ebenezer Howard, invented in the 19th century, which is basically the blueprint for the nightmare we call suburbia. On the other hand, you see an image of the modernist movement that had the idea to stack people on top of each other in boxes. Of course, a dream for every real estate developer, but a nightmare at the end if you want to create a human-centric approach to architecture. So these are some impressions of the outcomes of those ideas. This is in Hong Kong. This is California. This is in Shanghai. This is also in Shanghai. And as you can see, it's all interesting how those buildings connect to the urban realm. I mean, what happens to public space if the only place to go in is a mall that's also shut off by a wall? So where's the connection between the buildings and the public concept at the end? I mean, as I said before, like people move to cities to gain personal growth, to find inspiration, to get new ideas, and to really make them yours. So we were thinking, how can we contribute to that idea of a personal place, of a city that feels more human-centric, that really connects people, and you're not stuck somewhere on the 40th floor where the only place you can meet is basically an elevator cabin or a corridor. So we started 3.5 years ago with our project called Mini Living, focusing on a big life on a small footprint, meaning how can we work creative with a space that's given with like high density areas, but without any sacrifice, while even it's the opposite, it's getting more out of it at the end. So everything we do is based under the bracket big life on a small footprint. And we started 3.5 years ago to place installations, to communicate ideas as an open discussion to the public, to learn, to gain feedback, and really show our interest to focus on architecture and to understand the city from a holistic perspective. And I would like to guide you through the project we've done over the last 3 years. We started in Milan 2016, thinking about the architectural element that really separates people from each other, which is obviously the wall. It's so weird, you live next to a person 20 centimeters away, but you actually never meet your neighbor at the end. So we designed a micro apartment, roughly 20 square meters, where all the functions that you need for your daily lives, your kitchen, your storage space, everything basically, your workplace, everything was inside of the walls. And the idea is that you could rotate those functions to your neighbor, so you can share functions from your private space with the community, with your neighbor. And there's different gradients. You can open up completely or you can be private, but the idea was that the more people share those functions with each other, the more life evolves between those different apartments. And I would like to show a short movie about our very first initial concept. Mini is a vanity, actually. We would like to understand the city as an entity consisting of mobility, architecture, and most importantly, of the people and the way they live inside of cities. Yeah, the basic concept of the whole installation is that, of course, you can share the functions with your neighbors with the help of the shelves, actually. So each shelf has a distinct function. For example, there's a shelf where you could integrate your personal workspace into. You have everything you need. You have your pencils, you have your notebook there, and you can work either in private, inside of the unit, or you can open up the shelf to the outside, so you work more in a community, in a co-working space, actually, with your neighbor. I mean, the basic idea is that you live in this inspiring and creative community. And for us, inspiration comes from sharing ideas and work together. One neighbor shares his kitchen to the outside, and the other one starts sharing his music instruments, while you still have food and everything, so the kitchen party is actually about to start. Creative work happens when you share ideas with other people. This is one of the main elements, actually, that people start working together, that they share their ideas to create much more than they maybe could do by themselves. We translated one of our core principles, the creative use of space, into the concept of the architectural installation. To live on a small urban footprint, but at the same time be connected to a vibrant and inspiring community. Okay, that was loud. Amazing. Yeah. So we believe there's a high potential to inform architectural typologies by blurring the boundaries between the private and the public. I think that's something that's actually the way how to do architecture in the future, based on the concept of sharing, and how can we create new typologies that are really based around this idea. For our second idea, or second concept we put in the London Design Fest 2016, we pushed this a bit further. We were thinking, in a place like London, where if you want to live in the city center, people roughly spend 70% of the income just on renting a very, very shitty place. So you have a very cramped apartment with basically no functions in it. And we thought, maybe it would be nice to have temporary extensions to your private small apartment that are shared and are public. So we placed three structures, 2 buildings actually, small and unused urban areas in the east of London that were seen as examples of temporary extensions of your private space. Spaces that you need, functions that you need, but you just cannot afford if you live in London. But if you share them, they suddenly become affordable. So we had a place to connect, to meet, to have dinner with your friends, basically a living room that you always like to have, a space to create and to work in, and a space that everybody needs as well, like a private spa that we can zoom out and just enjoy the moment. As you can see, the design was all about the blurring of public and private. So you had a very intimate space, but it was directly placed on the sidewalk. The facade was a 5-layered polycarbonate element that really gave an idea what was happening inside and also outside, but you weren't were never really sure and could never really see from the inside to the outside. As I said, they were basically just placed on the sidewalk to show that there's actually potential inside of cities to do stuff like this. So these are some ideas that people can just take those space over, that you can have dinner with your friends there for an evening, and then somebody else takes over the space when you're not using it. This was the workplace where you can reconfigure the interior according to your personal needs, whether it be a presentation mode or a brainstorming session. Because of course you can go to a Starbucks place or a cafe to work, but it's never really yours. You cannot really work with the place, and it never really feels personal. This was the little Zen place, the private moment place, and it was really interesting to see that actually it doesn't take much to zoom out of the hectic life of the city. It was a small tower, you walked up this little hill and then jumped into the structure and just sat there for 5 or 6 minutes, and it was really, really interesting because you still had this idea of what's actually surround you from acoustic presence and the visual presence, but you were really like zoomed out on a personal level. As you can see, all the space were like filled with plants, but the idea was not just decorative, it was more the idea that it works like a public library. So you could bring in plants from your home and take plants back to really give the idea that you can personalize the space and also to build up a connection between your private apartment as well. It was super nice to see how people just took over the space during the London Design Festival. Of course, fair enough, there were more plants stolen than brought into those spaces, but that's always the same at the events. But the topic of green and the future and how we can build a more sustainable future in the future, of course, is something that we as architects and designers need to tackle. And that to our third installation called Breathe, that I had the pleasure to work with Ilias together on in 2017. And with Minu, you always try to find a different angle how to communicate topics that are relevant. So we didn't want to lose ourselves in the latest energy balances, scoreboards, or the latest, smartest eco-materials. We wanted to create a building that made you really aware, basically, of what's surrounding you, like what is really vital on this planet to live, and how can architecture support that consciousness to really be involved in the natural environment, which also, of course, exists in cities. So we were thinking of a building that didn't actually have any walls or any floors. There was not separating you from the exterior, and that it also worked as a small ecosystem, contributing and giving back to the surrounding. We implemented a small tower in an empty courtyard in the heart of Milan for Salone that cleaned the air, filtered the light, and also collected water. It was a very, very simple structure. It was a couple of platforms stacked on top of each other, integrating everything you need in a house. There was a living room in there was a kitchen in there was a garden terrace, and everything was shared, always basically bent together by a structure, and then we wrapped a smart textile facade throughout the tower that filtered the air from pollution. So the idea is really like how can a building contribute to really elevate your senses towards a more conscious way to live with nature, but also give back to the microenvironment, contributing improvement of the surrounding area. As you can see, the building was super transparent while you were inside. It was basically just like living outside, but it created at daytime a very private atmosphere as well on the inside. And you can see you don't need much decoration or basically design elements when the sun at the end really designs the atmosphere and the environment. And you really could feel the wind blowing through the structure. You could feel the sunlight on the skin. And it was really like living outdoors, but you still were enclosed and felt very intimate, actually. So I would also like to show a small movie about this project, explain the background and also the atmosphere.
Could your home be more than a home? Could it make things better? Not just for you, but for everyone. What if your home were a living, breathing thing? At Salone del Mobile in Milan, Mini Living sets out to explore this.
With Mini Living, we're extending our work on creative use of space to architecture. And the challenge of designing a better apartment and a better workspace, and ultimately contributing to a better neighborhood and a more open and collaborative city is one of the most interesting challenges to us right now. We explore how to design for life on a small footprint.
The installation provides a variety of atmospheres and spatial experiences in 3 different levels. Its airy, open structure creates space to breathe while it's breathing in itself. The structure amplifies the presence of natural resources such as light, air, and water, creating a highly sensorial home that reconnects its residents to their surroundings.
Obviously, we all love cities, right? We want to live inside of cities. They're vibrant places, they're beautiful places, but they're also very dense. The main challenge actually to live inside of cities is shrinking spaces and how we can activate those spaces in new and creative ways. We designed the house as an active ecosystem, making a positive contribution to its urban context. In a world constantly changing and evolving, why should our homes stay the same?
Yeah, we were also very lucky during that week with the weather, I have to say. But anyways, it was a super nice project, and it was also, I mean, we had like 50,000 people in 5 days coming to this installation, so we really thought, okay, it makes sense to continue and like, become more present and have a continuous idea. And last year for Salone, we were thinking about I think another important layer, and I think that's something I heard also try to understand today, was in a couple of presentations, is the participation in design. Like, how can we get more engaged? How can everybody be engaged in design? How can everybody become an architect or designer, even if it's not his or her professional background? But I think we all should build the future we want to live in, and we all should be involved in the process of building this. So that was the idea behind the concept of Built by All. Last year at Salone, and we were thinking, how can we provide a very simple toolkit that enables everybody to become an architect just for a day? So we developed a 2-component toolkit. One element was the so-called totem. It was basically a clever piece of furniture integrating everything you need. It had storage, integrate the bed, all these elements. But it was configurable. Everybody could modulate it in a different way. The second element was about self-expression, because of course it doesn't get more personal than your private space, so it should somehow reflect your personality as well. And we set up 2 spaces. One space was the so-called Factory of Ideas, where we invited everybody to build his or her own mini living micro-unit really related to his or her personal preferences and design ideas, of course in a very abstract way, but it was, if you've ever been to Salone, it's a crazy hectic week. Like, usually nobody has time and basically to look at things. Everybody's running around. But we had 70,000 people in 6 days. They're building those models, and it really made us realize that there's such a strong intention to be creative and to design and work on our future worlds to come. That participation, I think, is one of the major aspects to do architecture and design in the future. So everybody could become part of the event of the installation and be showcased in there. But with Mini Living, we're not so interested in just the modelscape or keeping it abstract or 2-dimensional. So we set up in a empty warehouse, which was basically next door, a possible outcome of that idea, like what would happen if 4 friends move into an empty urban plot based on this idea to build basically a co-living concept in there, with 4 different living unit modules and a shared area in between, integrating a kitchen, a gym, and a place to hang out. So this was the outcome of it. As you can see, it was very colorful. We also experimented a lot, like what can color do to small spaces. And at the end, every unit looked completely different, reflecting the personality of the person that would live in there. Some impressions of the kitchen area, and as you can see, there was tons of stuff to explore, and it's really nice to bring those concepts to a platform like Salone and see how people react with it, because for us, we don't know the answer. It's basically just a proposal, and we are constantly learning and hoping to get feedback from the audience about the ideas and integrating those also in future concepts. Another topic that's interesting for us is local authentic design, because I took those pictures in Brooklyn, Shanghai, and Berlin, and honestly, I have no idea which picture was taken where. We have this common sense what a coffee shop looks like around the globe. And that creates something you could call it almost an airspace. You don't even know where you are. And if you travel a lot, and I think especially creatives and young people, they move around for jobs and these kind of things, it's so weird that you find the same place in a very different cultural environment. So we started a series called the Urban Cabin Concept, of course, based on the idea of a small personal footprint, by placing 16 square meter micro apartments in the public area, but each one should reflect basically the city and the location they are placed in. So this was the first one we did for London Design Festival. As you can see, it has always this idea of transparency by movable elements, of opening up to the public. We attached a small micro-library to it related to the City of London and the decrease of libraries, given this rich history of libraries in London. We used a copper mesh material as the facade, reflecting, of course, as you can see a little bit in the background, this brick color that is very Londonesque, but at the same time also showing the reflection of the modern London consisting of glass and steel. As you can see, this topic of transformative architecture and how basically spaces can open up but also close down is something that has been an ongoing red thread throughout the installation, because again, we want to basically evaluate and think of how we can blur, or what potential lies between blurring the boundaries of your private life and the public life. So this was the London cabin. For the second cabin, we went to New York and put it in an empty courtyard in Brooklyn. And we were focusing on New York as a city of arrival, basically providing both the chance to open up and meet new friends, but also to close down. Reflecting New York as a very colorful place, of course, but as you can see, for example, in this spiky thing that's attached to the side was a little place to hide in, but it had also the harshness to the outside. It was an emotional piece, trying to communicate what it feels like to arrive in a new city, because you need to meet new friends, you need to build connections, but at the same time, a new city can also be frightening, and sometimes you just want to close down and basically stay very private. The last cabin we did was for House Vision in Beijing, where we interpreted the traditional house of the hutong, the courtyard topology that's very present in China, and broke it up and opened it to the public. As you can see, all are basically the same size, but look very, very different, always reflect the local surrounding and the local culture. For example, here the gold is not just a material because it works nice on Instagram. It's a reflection of Beijing as a city of the emperor, and the emperor's color basically, or material, is gold, obviously. But it also, of course, provides us the opportunity to really bring the outside in. Even when the piece closes, you still have a very strong connection visually to what's happening around you. The interior was a complete peg wall where you can configure the shelving related to your needs. We had a bed you could slip outside to sleep under the stars. And as you can see, those ideas of the tables that were rotated to invite the public to have dinner with you is something that has been an ongoing topic for us. And of course, the fun aspect, that actually architecture and the way we live should really embrace our idea of how to live positively and creative in the future. So that was what we did for the last 3.5 years. So what's happening this year is we take it a step further. We collected ideas, we brought them together, we learned a lot with the installations, but we thought, wouldn't it be nice to do something more permanent? And I explained this already a little bit. We want to work against basically all the elements that we don't like about cities and provide new alternatives as experiments, basically, that we can learn from and create a more human-centric approach to build cities in better ways. Based on those two basic principles, one, the creative use of space and the small personal footprint, and the other one is this open house philosophy by opening up and providing transformative architecture, and architecture that really enables you to connect to the city itself. How does it work in practice? I mean, this creative use of space is, you can live in a small space, but I think nobody of us wants to live in a small shoebox. You want to have space available on a temporary base that are shared, so basically at the end, you get more out of it. So this is behind the creative use of space topic, and the open philosophy is to build a connection to the city, invite the city in, become more than a residential building, not be exclusive, but rather inclusive, and integrate a strong connection to the place that you actually live in. If you've ever been in Shanghai, it's a very, very interesting place. It's a place with a rich history, but also very forward-thinking. And those two elements, they merge together in this basically craziness that happens every day in Shanghai with constant change and a very flexible mindset as well towards new ideas and new solutions. Our project is located in the Jing'an district. It's basically where China opened up its doors to the west, so it's a very forward-thinking district as well. And we're renovating an existing old paint factory that was unused for roughly 8 years at the moment and transforming it into places to live, work, and play. It's a very cultural place, opening lots of spaces to meet, to installations, and the place itself should become a platform for creatives to work with, to experiment, so it's not a fixed scenario. As you can see, it also integrates mobility, so we're trying to bring in together all the elements that you also need, and of course reflects also the background of the company. And I would like to give a little insight what we're doing there. So as you can see on the left, this was the existing situation. It was very cut off, basically. There was a lot of barriers. And we took out one small building in the front, created a small plaza, and then placed a structure on top of this plaza that works as a public gallery. So it's completely open, you can just walk in, there will be installations and events happening in there. It's really meant to change also in shape over time and to be activated by designers and creative to exhibit and showcase their work. And then we connect all the buildings with bridges, so there's a seamless idea between workplaces to work, places to hang out, and also places to live. Here you see this front elevation of the public gallery that will be run by our space in Brooklyn. It will also move to Shanghai ADO, so it will be curated. But it's really meant to transform over time. It's a transformative structure that can easily be demounted and will also change in shape within a year. So the place is an ongoing experiment, basically, that is meant to be overtaken by the public. It's not a fixed idea and should stay open for change in the future. I talked a little bit about this local authentic design, and the graphic that the front piece at the moment has is not something we thought would be nice, but it's basically a window to the city. It's a screen to the city, and I mean China and especially Shanghai has a rich history of Chinese screen patterns that actually really are between a glass wall and an open window, and we thought it would be a good and nice approach to simplify them, work with the graphic and the layout of the screens, and basically at the end create also the overall image of the project. So when you come from New York to live there for a couple of months, you're really embedded basically in Shanghai. You're not somewhere else, also design-wise. This will also be what's basically featured there. We have young and creative emerging industries that will move in, all based in Shanghai. We have a public living room. It's not an exclusive lobby. It's a place to invite the public in, to just hang out, to take it over and to work with it. That can change from day to night. We offer places to work for free, so feel free to come to Shanghai to work if you want to, with amazing opportunities. It's really about bringing people together and connect people. We also have, of course, apartments in there, so we have 3 different apartment typologies, from small to big, whatever that means within mini living. We're talking between 15 and 30 square meters that all have the idea of sharing with transformative architecture. They're fully customizable, so even if you come there for just a month or 2, you can pre-configure the apartments in very simple ways. And we provide an archive of design elements, of textiles, so if your personal preference is rather to live in a green space, you can basically pre-configure and tell us that we don't want to build like like an enclosed, all preset environment. We want something that feels really active and interactive also. As you can see, the rotating shelves, for example, from the first installation are integrated in the design. So it's all in there, what we've collected as ideas over the last 3.5 years. It doesn't exactly look like that, but it's basically the result of the thoughts that we collected over the last 3.5 years. There will be 3 nice roof terraces, one about the future of food. As an urban farm, there will be an extension of the gym, and also a place to hang out and just enjoy the moment. These are some visualizations of those spaces, and they become those temporary extensions of your private apartment. So to sum it up, you have a small private apartment space, but you have basically endless opportunities to extend that apartment for the time that you need it. This is, of course, also where digitalization comes into play and the chances, I think. I mean, sharing is not a new concept, but I think nowadays, with the help of technology, it becomes something that's very convenient, also very flexible, and I think that's the big plus of digitalization, of course, at the moment, that it really enables you to live very flexible and very free. So we're developing an app that's not only easy to manage, to book, and to build a community, but also allows you to connect to the city in a broader scale, activating other spaces in the city. So this is some pictures I took from the construction site. As you can see, it's full on. We plan to open in 4 months. It's China, I believe in Chinese speed to finish this. But I think it's going to be really interesting, and as I said, it's a starting point to create an ongoing experiment on site. So Shanghai is the beginning. We're also working on a project in New York and one in Berlin. Of course, one flag is missing, which is Athens. So we hope to come to Athens with a project soon. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you for the very inspiring presentation. I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit more about this new concept and how it works, and is Mini the operator? Is Mini just developing these projects? Do you stay involved?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's a learning experiment also for us, and it's meant to be very open. So at the moment, Mini is basically, we're doing the design. That's our focus at the moment. We work with a developer together that also operates and runs the project for us, because we just cannot do it all at the moment. It's a learning process for us as well. It's a very open process, and as I said, it will also be all about the people that live in there, that give feedback to improve overall the experience for everybody.
And it seems that, now I'm curious, what is the target audience? Who's going to live there? It seems to be conceived around a more sort of nomadic lifestyle, but could a family, for example, move in there?
Yeah, we have, in this project in Shanghai, we have 3 different types of apartments. But for example, in the project in New York, it's much more spread out, starting from a very small space to a rather big apartment. So that's definitely, basically everybody can move in. I think what sums up our idea who would like to move in is somebody that embraces to share, and that's also embraces the moment to step out of your comfort zone a little bit. So it's something that at the end, I mean, why do we move to cities? We move to cities to have a moment of surprise that basically you cannot expect, which is around the next corner. And I think at the end, ideally, people move in that really embrace this idea of a surprising moment. And it's not an age group, it's also not an income group. It's more a mindset of people that believe when they open up a little bit their doors, and if they get disturbed, like in the first installation, at the end get more on a personal level and can basically grow out of it.
And I'll have one more question, and then I would like to also open the floor to the audience and see if someone has a question. But you talked a lot about dense urban living in cities. That's what you're looking at the moment. But I find, at least I read recently an article that it seems that millennials also showing an interest in living closer to nature. Also with new technologies, you can basically work from anywhere. So I'm wondering if that has been a thought for Mini, or if there is a thought to expand and work outside the city.
No, absolutely. I think at the moment we're focusing, as you said, more on dense urban environments because we think this is where we need new solutions. We also are really thinking about that we're only going to focus on renovating existing structures, also in terms of sustainability in the future. But I think everybody needs a place that works like a retreat that also lives, is a little bit outside of the city. And I think at the end for us it will be the connection between those places. And the idea with the disconnect from the city urban living is something that came up when yeah, digitalization and all the internet topics were evolving. The weird thing is that still there's a strong, basically, movement in the city centers. I think at the end you need to provide different concepts for different mindsets. I think it's at the end both. Me personally, I would like to do a retreat because I'm in cities all the time, working on the projects, and I think it would be nice to have also an opposite experience for the people.
Yeah. I'm curious if someone has a question. I would love to open up the conversation with OK. Yep. Do we have a mic?
I'm Nefeli. I'm an architect and designer. And well, congratulations on your concept, and the presentation was all amazing. But what I'm wondering is, like, you showed us stuff that are really expensive, and for people to actually have access to a plot to live in a city that is as amazing as you show it, they must have a lot of money. So what I'm wondering is whether these ideas can actually be interpreted in the real density of a city and in the real small shitty apartment in London, you know, that people have to live in. Yeah.
I think, I mean, that's something where I have to split my personality. I'm sorry. I'm a bipolar person. I have, on one side, I work for Mini, which is a brand, right? And I mean, of course, what we do with Mini also needs to fit a little bit to what the brand stands for in terms of premium design and all these things. But I think, and that's maybe also why I love my job, is that we can provide those ideas and they're completely open. I mean, like, I hope that we can inspire projects also that are on a different maybe budget scheme to use the same ideas and translate them. Because at the end, you as an architect know this, just budget doesn't create a really, really great project. You know, like, it's at the end to work creatively with the money that you're given, and I think you can create something very nice also with less budget. And you're right. I mean, like, it's a product or a project for Mini as a brand, but we hope that we can provide something that people can take as an example and translate those ideas also maybe to a different budget of a project at the end.
Hi. Thanks. Hi, I'm Sophia.
Hi.
I'm an architect as well. And I'm a professor in architectural design at the University of Thessaly. And I've been recently, well, not recently, 2017, I published a book called Mikrokatikia, which is all about tiny houses. So I spend a lot of time researching, mostly online.
Is that me?
We need to go.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
So I was so happily surprised to see that Mini is developing, you know, mini apartments that are affordable. I mean, Mini is an affordable car.
I mean, it depends on what you.
It's not a Honda.
It's not a Honda, yeah.
It's not a Honda, but it's still an affordable. So affordability is one of the empowering tools and one of the driving forces that led a lot of people, not only designers, but also like the tiny house movement in the US is mostly DIY groups. And it's all about instructions about how to do it yourself that are either you can purchase or you can find online. And then on the other hand, you have this incredible accentuation of design inventivity, like the inside, outside, the house that totally transforms like a car. And I think I would like to hear more about the combination of both.
Of
Affordability and design engineering.
Yeah, I think affordability in general, it's, as I said, like the sharing topic in general creates, I think, a great experience while still being affordable. I mean, as I said, like in London, nobody can afford those spaces to have all the time, but you also don't need it all the time. So to have a space like this available is compared to renting a very big apartment already quite affordable at the end. Of course, you can layer this down and down and down at the end, as I said before, like in terms of how much budget do you have and all these things. But I think the topic of sharing in general, there lies a very, very big chance to reinvent architecture. I have a mixed feeling with tiny houses, I have to say, because I think they communicate the same mindset with how much space do we really need, but it's usually just one piece, right? That it sits isolated somewhere. And I believe there's a high quality if those tiny houses come together to shape a community and a really like an urban surrounding to generate also more realistic and more, how can I say this? Like, it doesn't make sense to urban farming by yourself. It makes sense to urban farming for 100 people or 120 people. Then it becomes reasonable to do, or to collect energy. It becomes reasonable if 100 people collect this energy together. So I have a belief that in this scale between a village and a city, somewhere lies a big potential to create identity, neighborhoods, but also to use resources more efficient than to do isolated tiny houses, let's say. On the other hand, I think what the tiny house movement really pushed is to start with the cuteness and all the lovely aspects, is to really made a lot of people aware how much space do we really need. And I mean, I always ask this myself, how much space do I need? And it's crazy. I mean, like space consumption in Germany, for instance, rose, I think roughly 30 square meters per person in 50 years. So we consume a lot of space, but at the end we don't need it. And at the same time, people cannot move into cities anymore because there's no place available, there's no spaces available. And I think it's a failure of architecture and also the housing market to provide new innovative concepts that creates small apartments that are not shoeboxes, that you can extend and really have everything you need for your daily life without sacrifice. And I think that's something that the tiny house movement really pushed with this in terms of thinking.
That's quite interesting because your let's say tagline is big life, small footprint. So I guess we talked a lot about the aspect of space, but how does that the small footprint? I guess there is an idea about a more conscious living in terms of resource consumption. Can you speak about maybe some of the ideas applied in the projects in Shanghai?
Yeah, I mean, for instance, we bring the first residential car fleet to China. It's not existing there as a model. China still has this thinking that we need big cars, like, it's the biggest car market on the planet. Of course, that also provides my salary at the moment. But I think it's time to bring innovative ideas like car sharing also in this field. And I think overall that's the general idea behind Mini Living, is to share things with each other, spaces, tools, ideas, all these things to get more out of it at the end. So it's not something out of sacrifice or because you cannot afford more. It's the opposite. You spend less, but you get more at the end. Overall, of course, like financial models and rent, that's one thing. But for me personally, I think it's really weird. Residential buildings usually have no public character. There's nothing there. I mean, you don't even know your neighbor, but you also are not really connected to the city. And I think especially residential projects can provide so much more, and that's what we're trying to achieve with the project in Shanghai. It's very, for China, you need to understand China is very hermetic. Like the only places in Shanghai are shopping malls, hotel lobbies, and also the residential compounds are very private. The Chinese are very almost afraid of public, to mix the public with the private. So it was really interesting when we started the project and we went to the local government to pitch the project and explain what we're planning to do. It could have been the opposite way. They could have said, like, this is nothing for China, like people think different, like this is not happening. But they were really into the idea to bring something new to the table, to test that out. And of course, the project in Shanghai is also not just about Chinese people. We want to have it as an international place, bringing in people from Greece that need to, or getting a new job basically in Shanghai, they want to move there. But if I would move there from my company, I would probably end up, I don't know, somewhere in a very anonymous high-rise, and I would never feel connected to the city. It happens. I talked to a lot of expats there. They're there for 2-3 years, and the only people they know is basically their colleagues. They're also expats, and you end up in this weird bubble. in those places, and I think that's something we try to work on, to really connect you to the city that you live in. And I think that's why this public layer is so important, to build this bridge between your private life and the city you live in.
Yeah, I find this connection between like the global and this sort of community that has this more nomadic lifestyle, and then also this desire for really connecting with the local and understanding the local culture in each of the cities that you are operating in. Maybe you can, I don't know if you can do that, but maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the other two projects that you're doing in New York and Berlin. Are they also in existing buildings, and how do you, what are the elements there you took from these local places and you try to bring into the project?
Yeah, they're very different projects. Like the project in New York is an old hotel we're renovating in Madison Avenue. It's a high-rise. That, of course, is a little bit difficult because you have usually a very limited public access. You have a ground floor usually, but we have several terraces that you can access. We have exhibition spaces on the top. We also, from a design point of view, will bring in the outside of New York inside. So we really wrap basically the experience you have from the street inside to really create. We don't want to create any threshold. Basically, it should be an experience that you just continue the street into the building. So it's more. Shanghai has the most value because it's multiple buildings and really creates a neighborhood, and you have streets that come in. In New York, it's a bit more limited just because of the typology of the building, but still we try also to bring the public. I think it's me. Honestly. I think that's it. No, but we also try to bring the public to the vertical.
It's not for us, it's for the pavilions outside.
So, yeah, okay.
We're not in an airport.
Yeah. So it's so the characteristic and the basic ideas will always stay, but always very different, really related to the location we're working on, also in Berlin.
Okay, I think we have time for one final question. You're very fresh in Athens. You've been here for what, a day or less, but you did mention a desire to let's do something in Athens. So I don't know, do you have some first ideas? What would you take from our let's say locale and trying to bring into the project? How would you start approaching a project like that?
I would, and that's what I also need to mention. Like I wouldn't do it. I would ask you how to do it. I would ask the creatives and the people that really know Athens as a place. What makes Athens special? Like, what do you think is the quality of the city, and what also describes the local character? Because I'm not an expert. I live a suitcase life. I'm not from Athens, and I think that's also what, from our side as a brand, it's a platform for creatives to work with. It's not meant to provide the answers. I mean, it's something we are dependent on a dialogue, and especially in architecture. And if you focus on a local, authentic approach, I think you should ask the experts, which are obviously the locals.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for being here. And thank you for everyone for being here.